Good evening everyone. Thank you Nagwan for introducing me. The title of my paper today is Colonial Intervention in Kosi Diyara, Ecology, Economy and Political Administration in Purnia District in late 18th and 19th century. Kosi Diyara in Purnia District in Bihar became one of the earliest provinces to be brought under the British colonial administration. Known for its lush environment, as a riverine terrain and as a fertile ecology whose potential was yet to be harnessed, the colonial intrusion in the eco-sensitive region had disastrous consequences on both the physical and ecological landscape and on the socio-economic condition of region's inhabitants. The intrusion of colonial state in the form of construction of embankments, popularly called bans in Bihar, laying of roadways and railways, change the fragile ecology of the region by disturbing the natural flow of the river Kosi and by also affecting the traditional practice of irrigation and agrarian relation in the Kosi Diyara region. Given this context, through this paper, I will be making an attempt to explore the nature and range of transformation that were brought about by the colonial government in the Terracos region. Politics and economy of a region needs to be understood in relation with its ecology, as each such factors impact each other, and thus in my paper today I will focus how the colonial administration in search for more and more wealth, that is more and more revenue collection, invariably made alteration in the local ecology and how ecological changes in turn shaped the society, polity and economy of Purnia region during the late 18th and 19th century of the British colonial rule. One of the factors constituting the colonial ideology and British control of the Bengal province was their intervention in the topography of the colonized, impacting the local ecology by subordinating and transforming the natural environment through anthropogenic action. The Mughal territories that were secured by the East India Company in 1765 were divided into various levels such as Suba, Pargana and Maujaz for administrative convenience. Purnia has been one of the most fertile regions of Gangetic Bihar, which propelled the British to focus on monetizing the productivity and these fertile lands offered, and hence in initial years the East India Company concentrated on extracting revenue from the peasants to add to the state coffers. However, the famine of 1770 created chaos in the administrative wings of the colonial regime, urging the British to gather details of agricultural records and locally available maps to ascertain the terrain and the productivity of the region. The mapping of the terrain for the estimation of revenue emerged as a tedious task, as the British found it impossible to make sense of and distinguish the boundaries of the Parganas and the precise location of each village within them. The annual floods caused by river Kosi in the region further aggravated the process, pushing the British to conduct their own surveys and employ cartographers to prepare maps to understand the regional topography and the river system. In the late 18th century, British ethnographers were sent to rural North India to study and document the socio-economic activities of the people. For this purpose, Francis Buchanan was sent to Purnia. Before Buchanan, Major Rennell surveyed Bengal in 1779. When Buchanan began his survey process, he noted several changes in the river courses, places name, territorial size and extent, as was documented in the survey times of Rennell. Buchanan's survey led to more discovery of information, such as that he found out that the northern regions sharing boundaries with the Gurkhas had disputed territories, as the landlords on both the sides made frequent territorial changes to the land, and the jamindars also gave misinformation on their land size and losses incurred on their lands, and had intentionally classified certain lands as wasteland and categorized them as unproductive. The territorial subdivision proved confusing, with their jurisdictions being unalterably intermixed of very unequal sizes and population, denoting that maps were not consulted for demarcating the region. Such situation made it extremely hard for the administrators to assess, fix and collect the land revenue. Purnia witnessed numerous famines during the colonial period. The 1770 famine was a profound blow not only to the system of revenue collection but also to the administrative rationale of the British rule. George Ducarel, the supervisor of Purnia district, estimated that half the population perished during the famine. And Muhammad Raja Khan's review of the famine recorded the loss of all crops and yields. In spite of such a great calamity, Raja Khan in his report given in June 1770, taken from K.K. Datta's Comprehensive History of Bihar, said that he has collected as much revenue for the year 1770 as could have been done in such severe weather. Moreover, there was an increase in land tax by 10% with no concern for the disastrous effects of the famine on the people and on the land. K.K. Datta observed how such indifferent policies of the British led to a situation where the peasants were compelled to leave their lands and villages and forcing them to flee from the burdening condition of British taxation. The 1770 famine had hit the district hardest and had left the greater portion of the uncultivated land as wasteland. Francis Buchanan, who was one of the earliest proponents of commercializing the Kosi Diara region, estimated that at the time of his survey, around 35% of the land was declared wasteland. He believed that much of the land that was being declared waste was found to be under cultivation, and those that were not, he suggested that such land should be brought under cultivation, quoted in Christopher V. Hill's River of Sorrow. Buchanan in particular was upset with the lack of utilization of wild forest lands. He formulated a plan to utilize the wild forest lands in the riverine area. In place of fruit trees, he introduced teak plantation, going so far as to suggest that such commercialization be forced upon the zamindars. Along the marshy, sandy banks of the lower Kosi, the production of tobacco was encouraged, while the grassy lands were to be used as pastures during dry season and were to be leased out for indigo cultivation in the rest of the year. Groups of wild animals were to be reduced or killed. This was suggested by Buchanan. Hill states that Kosi Diara region became an early testing ground for the implementation of an imported Eurocentric land revenue policy. Beginning with the enforcement of various land revenue settlements like Salana Bandobast, Dahsala Bandobast, etc., but none were seen as profitable to the East India Company. As a result, the British administration in 1793 introduced a new land revenue system by instituting permanent settlement where revenue was fixed and the zamindars were made responsible to collect revenue from the peasants and transfer the collected revenue to the British government. Basically, zamindars will play the role of intermediaries between British government and the peasants. Hill notes that Cornwallis and his advisors, in their eagerness to inject a stable revenue system into the area, completely overlooked the aspects of local reason by basing their assessments on European standards. From the very outset of the enforcement of permanent settlement system, the government faced challenges involving the collection of revenue from both zamindars and tenants of lands in Kosi Diara. Ducarel stated how the company used the revenue collected from Purnia to fund troop maintenance and make capital investments in Europe, and how such misuse of Purnia's resources by the British impoverished the region mentioned in Madneshwar Mishra's Purnia Jila ke Bhu Rajaswa ka Itihas. Furthermore, under the regulation of 1793, land revenue was settled with zamindars for entire estates, not for individual plots. The landlords had to pay entire jama, that is revenue demand, regardless of whether their lands were yielding or unyielding. It was their responsibility to gather the rents from their tenants, and when the raiyats, that is cultivators, could not produce due to the inundation of their lands, even in such circumstances, zamindars compelled the raiyats to produce and pay through coercive means, as the zamindar was obligated to pay the fixed amount of revenue to the British. Added to this, as Christopher Hill states, where there occurred a phenomenon where vast tracts of land in Purnia was purchased by absentee landlords, leading to a situation where the intermediaries became influential in the early decades of the 19th century. as much of the district and its vast lands were controlled by the intermediaries. Such intermediaries became another causal factor of peasant operation, troubles in revenue assessed and revenue collected, desertion by peasants, and increase in cultivable wasteland. The district officers' lack of control of Purnia and of its intermediary land revenue collectors resulted in a situation of lawlessness in the district. Owing to certain geographical and ecological conditions of the region, European officers avoided getting posted in Purnia. Lawlessness, unhealthy atmosphere, complex agrarian hierarchy made Purnia a difficult region to administer and control, and the district was constantly understaffed due to such conditions. While going through the Purnia collectorate records during my archival research, I have come across many letters written by the collector of Purnia asking for leave or for transfer because of their ill health. In 1801, when the Governor General Marx Wellesley visited the Kosi Diara area of Purnia, he observed, and I quote, "The uncultivable parts of the Pargana are never likely to be brought into the state of cultivation, both on account of the sterility of the soil, which yields so poor a return for land labor, but is subject to annual inundations, the period of which are so variable and dependent upon so many unforeseen causes as to render the realization of the produce of the ground brought into cultivation a matter of great uncertainty." In view of the state of affairs in this region, the Board of Revenue passed the following regulations dealing with land revenue, such as Bengal Land Revenue Assessment Regulation in 1819, Bengal Alluvion and Diluvian Regulation of 1825, Bengal Alluvion and Diluvian Act of 1847, and Bengal Tenancy Act 1885 that were enforced to deal with the prevailing conditions. In terms of the riverine topography of this region, it is important to understand the nature of river Kosi, which flows in Purnia region. The Kosi river was known to carry enormous load of silt, sand and gravels from its sources in the Himalayan upstream, which led to occurrence of breach of its banks, change in its flow patterns, and causing severe floods in the region. Floods constituted one of the greatest obstacles with which the administration had to contend with. The main motive of colonial interference in the agriculture and irrigation pattern was to avoid the loss of revenue remitted and the high cost of relief measures adopted during famines. Another important motive was to help increase the production of food grains so as to maintain the balance of payment position of India through increased food grain export in those times. Buchanan, while talking about the irrigation pattern in the district, says that the spring rice was watered by a machine called jant and gardens are watered by the lever called dab. No other kind of artificial watering was used earlier. In seasons when rains were less or failed, dams were made across smaller rivers and efforts were made to distribute water to the fields by means of canals. The irrigation and embankment section of the village note register found in the Purnia district archives also tells us that the villagers depend mainly on rainwater to irrigate their fields and on wells for the supply of drinking water. Land was inundated by Kosi and small nalas were made by villagers for irrigation purpose. In these districts, there are no embankments made on a large scale, while the tenants in some places have united to form small banks. But things changes in the later half of the 19th century. Erection of embankments along rivers in North Bihar was started by the colonial state on a large scale from the beginning of the 19th century. Initially, it began with the restoration and extension of old dilapidated zamindari embankments and construction of others to protect important colonial establishments. Bir Bandh was a very old embankment on the western bank of Kosi to check the encroachment of the river westwards. But later in the second half of the 19th century, Britishers come up with the concept of permanent embankment on very unscientific lines. This is explained very well in the work of Professor Vipul Singh's The Speaking River. The response to floods in such situation lay mostly on creating more and more embankments in the region, further hampering the local topography and ecology. The Teljuga Bandh, built to protect Darbhanga from the western flow of Kosi flood, led to rise in Kosi flood level, thus affecting the Purnia region more drastically. The old irrigation works were inadequately looked after by the colonial administrations, and decline of the traditional system of irrigation was again the result of the changes brought about by the colonial administration. Many private embankments were constructed by zamindars, and part of these, the extension of railways in the area, especially the Barauni-Katihar line, also disturbed the flow of channel of river Kosi. In the last quarter of the 19th century, there was a large-scale construction of railways and roads in this region. It was precisely in this period, says Praveen Singh in his PhD thesis Colonizing the Rivers, that the irrigation department was trying to control and regularize the construction of any embankments and repairs of old ones, which were the worst offenders in obstructing the drainage of the country. In North Bihar, Praveen Singh says, railways and roads with inadequate waterways could be considered as bandhs. He points out how the way they were built without a proper survey of the region through which they crossed, and without taking into account the local opinion, and how it created a lot of problem for the already grave flood situation in North Bihar. Praveen Singh also asserts how that it is not that the colonial intervention led to floods. Floods were an integral part of the agroecology of the region, but what Britishers actually did is they increased the devastating, and British had changed the very nature of floods, making it more devastating and dangerous for the livelihood, property and human life in the region. He further observed how the flood problem also became acute in lands lying between the road and the railway banks, where once the water entered, it remained held in and thus delayed the subsiding of floods. The water logging in certain areas was due to the interruption of the natural flow of water by embankments and canals, which were insufficiently provided with waterways, and by which both the health of the people and productivity of the soil stood affected. Many acts, laws and rules were passed in 19th century related with embankment issues, but flood situation in North Bihar did not improve, it worsened further. The frequency of famine increased in the later half of the 19th century. North India witnessed a chain of famines in 1865-66, 1873-74, 1889 and 1896-97. Seems that the interference in the traditional irrigation system led this mishappening. The famine of 1873-74 severely affected the several districts of Bihar and Bengal, including Purnia. In September and October of 1873, the rains in much of the Bihar failed completely. This drought led to dramatic crop failure on a provincial scale. The colonial administration thus planned to move permanently peasants from the overcrowded districts, primarily in North Bihar, to areas with large section of wasteland. The motive behind this was mainly to bring the uncultivable land into cultivation. It is dismay to see how the measure endeavored to transform and commercialize this unique ecology by promoting migration to the wilderness as a solution for widespread famine. In this attempt to use the environment as a cure for social ills, the government had left the people in a more precarious agrarian situation. The British had once again failed to note the distinct social, ecological and agrarian characteristics of North India, just as the permanent settlement had neglected to take into account Bengal's unique riverine environment. So too had colonial migration policy failed to recognize the operation presents by constantly changing environmental picture in the Kosi Diara region. Thus we see how the colonial intervention in the Kosi Diara region affected the ecology, and ecology in turn affected the socio-political and economic. Yeah.